Well, that may have been the saddest thing I think I've ever seen. This whole saga of Francis Ngannou versus the UFC was absolutely captivating. Dana White and the UFC absolutely love that they have these fighters chained up by the balls. They barely pay them anything. They're not allowed to fight for any other organization without their permission. And they take away half of your money if you don't win the fight. But look, I understand that the early prelim fighters, they're not actually generating any revenue for the UFC. So I understand that they're not getting paid that much. But then let me ask you this. Why did Dana White take away the sponsorships that fighters could have on their shorts? Because Brendan Schaub, as much as I don't like the guy, proved he was making six figures per fight because of the sponsorships he was wearing on his shorts. But of course, that would give fighters financial freedom. And Dana White and the UFC do not want that, so they brought in the Reebok deal, which was the absolute worst thing they could have done for fighters. So now, the only sponsorship money these fighters would be making would be if people went to the UFC store and bought their Reebok gear. Now it would be Venom gear. And of course, no one in their right mind is doing that. And the UFC knows no one is doing that, but the reason why they re-signed another deal with Venom is because they want these fighters desperate, and they want to be able to control them. And Francis Ngannou gave the big middle finger to the organization. Everybody said he fumbled the bag. Everybody said he just blew it, he just ruined his career. But he went out, signed the mega deal with the PFL, and took Tyson Fury, the best heavyweight boxer on the planet, to a split decision. And in my mind, there is no question, even after the result of tonight, he came out on top against the UFC. And for that, he will always be a legend. But I'll be honest, I was very nervous for him going into this fight. Against Tyson Fury, Ngannou had a massive advantage in the fact that nobody expected anything from him in a boxing ring. Everybody was convinced Ngannou was going to get destroyed. And it's for that reason that Tyson Fury opened that fight up with a lunging right hand. He was going for the early finish because he didn't think Ngannou deserved to be in there with him. But going into this fight, that was no longer there. Anthony Joshua was very well aware that Francis was dangerous. He had to be careful, he had to fight very smart, and he can't take unnecessary risks because Ngannou will put your lights out with one punch. And that's exactly what he did, and he frankly showed Ngannou levels. I think overall, it's difficult to make an argument that Anthony Joshua is better than Tyson Fury, but they have two very different styles. Tyson Fury, he's very elusive, he's very jab-heavy, very feint-heavy, while Anthony Joshua is a knockout artist. But when Fury fought Ngannou, he didn't really fight like that. Just looking at the sequence when he got dropped, he's standing right in front of Ngannou, he's throwing a 1-2 right down the middle, right in punching range, just leaving himself open to get countered, and he did. And another huge aspect of Fury's game is using his size to clinch up with his opponents, really weigh them down and fatigue them. And he attempted to do this against Ngannou, but got a very rude awakening as Ngannou weighed just as much as he did, but was all muscle. And he just got completely dominated in the clinch. All in all, Fury got brutally surprised by Ngannou. And frankly, what he should have done was jab and move straight from the beginning. That was when he was having the most success against Francis, just staying away and using his reach to keep him at bay. But Anthony Joshua has a very different style. What he is so good at is cutting the angle, slipping a punch, and landing devastating combinations. And from the beginning of the fight, it was very clear AJ was a lot quicker than Ngannou. He was using his jab just to maintain distance. He did not want to be in the pocket with Francis. Ngannou kept trying to land his lead hook, but for one, Joshua was keeping his right hand glued to his head. And two, because he was purely relying on the jab, there wasn't a ton of opportunity for Ngannou to counter. So this kind of forced Francis to have to be the one to engage and step in to try to land. But that's exactly what Joshua was waiting for, and he read Ngannou's jab like a book. It kind of reminded me of the sequence where Conor McGregor finished Eddie Alvarez, where Eddie moved in with the right hand. Conor knew it wasn't going to hit him. It grazed his nose, and then he countered. It was the exact same thing. AJ was just waiting for Francis to overextend. He moves in with a jab. Joshua was well aware it wasn't going to land anywhere remotely near him, stepped in and countered hard. And that final punch that really put Francis out was a straight-up Josh Emmett lunging overhand. You just don't see punches like that land in world-class boxing fights. You just don't. But again, I really do not want to take anything away from Francis Ngannou and what he's accomplished. He, as a single individual, went up against the UFC, and in my mind, he absolutely won. But I don't think you can argue that. I think the MMA world hyped up Ngannou in boxing a little too much. What Francis was able to do to Tyson Fury will never not be impressive. But let's just be honest, the way the fight went how it did was not because Francis Ngannou was the better boxer by any means. But for him to go out there and beat Anthony Joshua kinda just defies logic at this point. Anthony Joshua is an Olympic gold medalist. He's been boxing his entire life, and Francis just didn't belong out there with him. I mean, I think if Francis were to have a rematch with Tyson Fury, Fury would just jab and move, keep his distance, don't overextend at all, make Francis be the one that has to move in with punches. He would have Francis be the one that has to do something. And the second Francis did, he would just look to land counters. And it would be a very different fight. And honestly, I think Anthony Joshua just saved the sport of boxing. The last time I talked about this fight, I made it very clear that if Ngannou beats Anthony Joshua, the sport of boxing is dead. And I got a lot of comments saying, no. Ngannou is saving boxing. He's saving boxing by going out there and defeating all of our best heavyweights. And that just seemed a little paradoxical to me, because Francis Ngannou is signed to the PFL. Francis Ngannou's background is in mixed martial arts, and he still is a mixed martial arts fighter. By defeating all the best boxers in the world, the only thing he is doing is bringing more attention to himself and MMA. How on God's green earth could we have taken all these heavyweights seriously if Ngannou beat them all? I mean, let's just call it how it is. The sport of boxing is already just hanging on by a thread. They do not have very many stars left. And the last thing they need is all of their heavyweights to get beaten. I mean, look, maybe if Ngannou just completely retired from MMA, said he's never going back and he's going to be doing boxing full time. Still, it's kind of embarrassing for them to lose. But then I get it. Okay, boxing has a new star in Francis Ngannou. But that was never going to happen. Ngannou's next fight after this is going to be in the PFL. All in all, I respect the hell out of Francis Ngannou, what he was able to do, going against the UFC, gambling on himself, and then going out there and putting on the performance he did against Tyson Fury, even with all the caveats I listed about it in hindsight. That's enough to make him a legend. But he should have not been in that ring with Anthony Joshua. And if he was able to beat AJ, the only thing that would have proved at this point is that the sport of boxing is fake. And let's be honest, would we really want that?